Hi there. My name is Gabby Boyle. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. I'm an academic success advisor with Student Success and Advising here at Western Oregon University, and I'd like to offer some skills that can help you be successful in your classes. We're going to go over time management, which is the foundation of a successful student. We're going to talk about study skills, what to do during a study session, how much we should be studying, and then what happens with tests. How do we prepare for tests? How do we take tests? How do we manage some of that test taking anxiety? The first thing to understand is that the transition from high school to college can be really unsettling and it can be very drastic. A lot of times, students in their first couple terms of college will feel very on their back foot, kind of startled at how much responsibility each class has. And we call this the 80-20 rule. So when you're in high school, your teacher is responsible for giving you about 80% of the information that you need to be successful in the class and on the tests and things like that. You're responsible for about 20% of reading or homework or doing your own investigation. In college, that's completely flipped. And so it's understandable that that would feel very startling because it's completely opposite. So in college, you as the student are responsible and expected to investigate, find out, read, review um, 80% of the information, whereas the teacher is directly giving you 20% of the information. And that can be in the form of lectures, recorded or live. That can be sometimes in the form of video content or reading content. So, this can be a good place for us to start thinking about what's expected of us in college. The next piece to think about is that there is a little bit of math that we can do here typically, and this is going to vary for class to class, but for a 4 credit course, you're getting 4 credits, which typically means you have about 4 hours or the equivalent of 4 hours of in class time. Now, if this is a fully online class, so an asynchronous class, that might mean you have 4 hours of virtual lectures that you're watching, like recorded lectures. It could mean that you've got other videos that you're watching, or it could mean reading of in class where you're learning the information. Then you are expected to spend at least the 1-to-1 ratio, so 4-to-4, or a 1-to-2 ratio, so 4 hours of in class time to 8 hours, that's the 1-to-2, of homework time. So that's how we can kind of think about it. And this is what we should be budgeting per course. Now, that doesn't mean that you're using this much time each week all the time, but this is a good place to start for budgeting your time. So we're looking at about 8 to 12 hours per week per course, depending on your comfortability level, the difficulty of the course. A lot of times it depends on if it's a lower division, so a 100 or a 200 level course versus a 300 or a 400 level course might have some more expectations for you if it's upper division. This is why you're called a full-time student. If you're taking 3 to 4 classes, you're getting right up there to about 40 hours a week that you need to be budgeting for classes. So you're a full time student and you need to budget your time as such in order to be successful. And I'm going to show you a little bit how to do that. The main thing about making the switch from high school to college, this 80-20 rule, and making the switch to being a full time student um, in college is that we need to work smarter, not harder. This, I know it sounds like a lot of time, but there's ways that we can work smarter and not harder. And I'm going to show you. Pro tip number one, no one can just remember all of the things. So if you have never had to use a paper planner or a digital planner, to-do list, something of tracking all of the things that you're responsible for, you need to start now. Even if it's sticky notes on the wall and all it has to do is make sense to you, right? Like you need to be able to keep track of when things are due, what it is that you need to be doing so that you can also understand how much time that task might take. There's a lot of different ways. TikTok has some good tips on this if you want to search through TikTok. Um, if you like spreadsheets, just putting all of your assignments into Excel, formatting it that way, that's cool. Google Calendar, good to go. Everyone at Western already has a Google Calendar because we are using Gmail as our main school thing. Um, this little checkbox thingy is like Microsoft's to-do list app image, but if you want to use just something, or a paper planner. What really worked for me is that I used my paper planner to keep track of what I'm supposed to be working on, what my deadlines are, all of my homework stuff, what needs to be done when, my due dates for the week. And then I used my Google Calendar to tell me where I was going to be, like where my class time chunks versus work versus homework time versus other stuff time. So I used two different styles at the same time and it worked really well for me. But you have to find something. That's my first thing. Because the number one reason why we might not be doing well is time management. And that's because we're forgetting to do things, we're losing track of deadlines. Number one issue that folks come into our office with, struggling to find success or failing classes. Pro tip number two, no more all nighters. What? I know. We all do it. We all still do it. But no more all nighters. All of the research says that you are not even doing quality work if you're doing an all nighter. Like it's just not worth it. And you're going to score lower, like the cramming for a test with an all nighter. No, your brain is going to function and be able to use information so much better if you have sleep the night before a test rather than just cramming and reviewing the information again. Not not worth it. Let's talk about scheduling. Let's really get into this because this is, if you get nothing else from this lecture today, you need to schedule your time smarter, not harder, smarter. So here's an example of a Google Calendar that I just found on the internet, and this schedule is not ideal. Take a second to look at it. Why might this not be ideal? This person has like their shower and breakfast and like get ready for stuff is scheduled, and then it looks like they're probably a morning person and they're pretty they work well in the morning, so they've given themselves a little 2-hour chunk in the morning for writing every day of the weekdays, and I think that that's great. Then they've got a little break. I'm assuming that this PFA is work because they have to drive to it, and that's great. But then let's look at the days where they've just got no work commitments. It just looks like they are studying, right? Look at this, 1:30 to 8 p.m. That's a long time. And it's just like a giant chunk of time with no other type of structure. So that's really daunting to look at your schedule and be like, oh, I'm going to have to be sitting there studying or doing homework this whole time. No one wants to do that. So instantly your brain's like turned off and not excited about it, or gets anxious about it of like, what? That's a long time. What am I supposed to do? How am I going to get everything done? Blah, 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 blah. Okay. So this is not how we need to be scheduling our time. Instead, 2-hour sessions with regular breaks is the way to utilize your mind's natural rhythm for attention and efficiency. Now, obviously, this might be different for everybody. Like if you find that, it's shorter, you need to do like 1-hour chunks, cool. But the idea is to chunk it out. One, even if you don't end up taking the same amount of breaks or whatever, just having the visual of seeing it on your calendar that it's in chunks and you've got breaks, it just helps. It just does. It just helps with the mind's anxiety of like, I'm going to be there for 7 hours. I'm going to be studying for 7 hours. Instead, give yourself that permission to do 2 hour chunks and a break and 2 hour chunks and a break. That's just, it works, I promise. Now, we've gotten that scheduled into our week, into our days, right? But then what do we do once we're there? Once we set aside the time, now we're at our desk. Now what do we do? My favorite and my number one recommendation is the Pomodoro Technique. There's an app for this, and I'm going to show you that on the next slide. But basically, the overall concept of Pomodoro Technique of studying is that you set a very specific task. So if it's reading, then it's I will read page blank to page blank. Then you do the thing for 25 minutes, and there's a timer. That's the big thing, is that there has to be a timer so that you're not continually looking over at your phone or the clock. You're just studying until the timer rings. And then you take a short 5 minute break where you move your body. Now, if you like to do TikTok or Instagram as your break, cool. I love that. Same. But stand up and do it. It actually tells your brain that you're taking a break. And then your brain is like, okay, we took a break. Thank you. Now we can get back to it. Okay. Our brains are basically toddlers, and we need to just like treat our brains as toddlers. Okay. So you do that 4 times where you do 25 minutes, 5 minute break, 25 minutes, 5 minute break. You do that 4 times, 4 study sessions. And then you can take a longer break. And this, okay, first, this is what got me through my master's program. Like, this is the only reason I have a master's degree. So I'm just saying, it works really well. Not everybody works the best with 25 minutes. But in the app that I'm going to show you, you can adjust that time, the study time, as you find what works for you. So there's a ton of apps on both Android and Apple. I used this one called Flat Tomato. I don't care which one you use. Sometimes it's called tomato timers. I don't, because of like little sections in a tomato. So it's either Pomodoro or tomato timer is some of the things that I use. Don't pay for it though. I don't, there's no reason to pay for it. Um, some of these apps, even the free ones like the Flat Tomato one that I used, it can sync with your to-do list app that maybe you're making on a different app, maybe like that. You can sync it, and so then you can choose which tasks to assign to each study session, and then it checks it off for you, and it does little like fireworks on the screen for you. The great thing about this is that it's a timer. It times it for you. It keeps track of how many things you're doing. Um, and it takes over your whole phone screen so that you're not getting notifications during it, which I think is really nice. Um, there are also really quick Google search if you just want to have it on your computer. Like it can just be on a web browser. Like you don't have to download anything. There's just really simple timers. Just Google Pomodoro timer or tomato timer. Number one recommendation, just try it. And if it doesn't work, then at least you know what doesn't work. And then we can move from there as well. Okay, just try it. Just try it. Okay, so now we've got our time set aside. Here are the two biggest mistakes when you're just like reading. So, textbook studying, like you're just reading something, whether it's like an article or like literally out of a book. Highlighting and underlining and rereading. Now, be honest with me. Who does that? Everybody. Everybody does that. Everybody highlights and underline. Like that's just what we do, right? Like that's what we've been taught to like highlight it and then like go back and reread it. What? These are the two biggest mistakes. What are we talking about, Gabby? The main idea is that can you tell on this page image here what the main point of this section is? Tell me. You can't, right? So just highlighting and underlining stuff doesn't actually help you in 3 weeks when you've kind of forgotten the like details of this section and you're going back to try and study for a test, this is not going to help you, right? Now, that doesn't mean that you can't highlight or underline while you're reading if that helps you like pay attention and actually read it. Like that's fine. Whatever, do that. Um, but add to it some of these techniques that I'm going to be showing you in just a second. Um, Basically, what we're wanting to do when we're studying, textbook studying, reading, whatever, and or like watching videos, this still works for watching videos. We're trying to be building our own study guide so that we can go back and answer questions later. And that guides how we're studying instead of just rereading it when we're trying to study. Like, that's not going to help us. So, what we're doing while we're reading is building questions that we think the professor would ask on a test, and we're writing those. Or, how would I, or what actual questions do I have while I'm reading this that I don't actually know the answer to? Like, maybe I have to investigate that further. And we're building those and we're writing those in the form of questions on our notes or whatever we're taking in that moment, so that we can go back. We've already built all of these questions. We go back and we pull all of those questions. That's our study guide. And then we just go through and we answer each one of those while we're studying instead of rereading. While you're doing the reading, instead of the highlighting, what I want you to try is doing downloads and telegrams. I also call telegrams tweets. And what that looks like is this. Okay, so instead of just like highlighting a bunch of stuff, it looks like this. This is done with sticky notes. It doesn't have to be with sticky notes. This is just kind of fun, right? And you still get to use pretty colors and all that kind of stuff. So a download is some kind of visual representation of one of the larger concepts in this chapter or maybe just this page, right? So in this example, this is a person, Darcy, somebody. And you'll see that it's like in the like pinwheel type of shape. This is activating our creative side of our brain with our analytical side of our brain, right? So as much of cross brain communication as we can get, the better. The better we're going to remember it, the better we're going to be able to use it later on. Okay, so some kind of visual of why are we reading this? Why is this even assigned? What's going on here? Then for each one of these smaller sections, we're going to be doing a telegram or a tweet. So this can be as simple as like, how would you tweet it? Tweet that paragraph. Or it could be in the form of hashtags, right? Like, what would you hashtag? So then when you're doing your study guide stuff, you can go and find all of the hashtags for that question. And then you know exactly where to look in the text to find the answer to that question on your study guide. Is your mind blown? I think so. So, we can't exactly like highlight during a recorded lecture or something. Like, we don't have the transcript of a lecture, right? But there are ways that we can take notes that will also serve the same purpose later on with building a study guide, with making telegrams and tweets. Okay, so some folks are familiar with Cornell style notes. I'm not going to go super in depth into them, but Cornell style notes are taught in some high schools, so you might be familiar with this. It's basically just a way of organizing your page when you're writing notes, and it works really well. Okay, so I like this image of it. Feel free to pause and read these things if you'd like, but basically, you're writing your notes just how you normally would in this large column towards the right of the page, just how you normally would, whatever works for you while you're listening to a lecture, just writing your notes. As you're going along or after, whatever works for you, on the side here, this is where you're doing the telegrams, right? So you're tweeting or you're asking your study guide questions. Maybe even the professor has some like guiding questions on the slides and you're writing those down so that you can go back to your notes and it's not just a bunch of like jumbled mess in 3 weeks and it's not just a bunch of stuff you don't understand what you were trying to say. You can go back, you can pull all those questions and all of those tweets and use those in your study guide. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Then down here at the bottom, you'll see that this is a page summary. So this is that download. You're downloading the whole lecture or this whole page, and you're making some kind of mind map type of image. A quick Google search of mind maps or note taking mind maps, concept maps can give you some ideas about the visual side of things if you want some like inspiration there of what image you should be making. And like there's not a right way to do it, but just some kind of like image. I don't know, just an image. It's a mind map. Do what you want. But some kind of download that gives you the overall message of what was going on in this lecture. Okay. Beyond the textbook studying techniques that we were talking about, these are the top 4 studying techniques ever, like overall in general. Self testing, right? So, building that study guide that we've been talking about. Distributed practice is talking about timing, right? So, that's talking about exposing like yourself to the content at short bursts, but like often, right? So, you can get really creative with that tomato timer, right? So you could do within the 1 clock, right? 25 minutes, 25 minutes, 25 minutes. Right? I think there's like four. Yeah, there's 4 25-minute things. So if you're in 4 classes, you spend 25 minutes on each one of your classes, and then you get the longer break. And then you come back, sit back down to study again, and you spend 25 minutes on each one of your classes. This does a couple things. One, it does the distributed practice so that not your brain isn't getting kind of like bored on one topic. So there's that, does distributed practice. Two, it makes sure that you're giving each one of your classes attention in each day so that you're not passing one class and then like super failing another class, right? Because that can happen too, where we start to focus on the class that we're the most anxious about, and then all of our other classes get left in the dust. If we can schedule it and, keep ourselves accountable to that, to be like, nope, every class gets some attention today, then hopefully we can be doing well in, or at least well enough in all of our classes at the same time. The other two on the bottom here about studying techniques are interrogation, and I call this activating your inner 4-year-old. So that's just why. Why are you saying that? Why is it like that? Who did that? Why? Why? Just interrogating it, right? So that's a really great way to understand how it connects to other concepts, how it connects to the larger goals of the class. And it's really helpful. The other part is teaching or tutoring, right? So I'm sure most of us have heard that like teaching is the best way to learn, right? So how would I teach this concept to somebody else? Or teach it to a 4-year-old, right? If you've got like kids in your life, try and teach it and see what questions they come up with of where do they get stuck on trying to understand it. Could be kind of cool and funny. I think it could be funny. Okay, so let's specifically talk about test taking. And this is more of like the traditional style of testing, right? Which isn't my favorite, but it happens still. So I want to give you some skills and some tools there. So this is like timed test, multiple choice type of really standard test style thing. Um, First, so we've built all of the time management and the study skills building up to the test. So then the day of the test, you have to do something, right? We said no more all-nighters. So you got sleep. Sleep. You have to sleep. I promise you. Sleep, please. You have to do something to lower your stress before and after a test, really. So um, some people really enjoy working out because you've got all this like nervous energy and sometimes you just need to like get it out. um Sometimes that works better for people before a test, sometimes it works better for people after a test, totally up to you, but that's an option. Going for a walk, maybe you like taking a bath, or maybe you like taking a nice hot shower, like whatever, just do something to lower your stress because stress just distracts your brain from actually doing well on the test and focusing. You also have to eat. Thinking takes calories. Okay, so you have to eat. Um, During the test, here's my big thing: ask your professor before the test, not in the moment of the test, but before the test, if you can have a scratch piece of paper to have a scratch piece of paper for the test. Okay. In the first 5 minutes of a test, I promise you is worth it to do a brain dump. Okay. So all of the things that you're like, don't forget, don't forget, don't forget, don't forget this thing, don't forget that thing, especially if you're doing a test that's like memorization y type stuff with it or like dates. And I'm really bad at remembering dates. So, first 5 minutes, just get it all out, write it all down, and you can do it in the form of those downloads or tweets just so that you can have a little memory tool. Just get it out so that your brain can be like, okay, it's on the paper. So, like, I don't have to be the only thing trying to keep it on lock. Then you can spend, if you've still got some time in that first 5 minutes, then you can, if you can, however the test is formatted, look forward in the test and see, like, okay, so that the last two questions in the test are essay questions. I'm going to do those first, and then I'll go back and do all of the multiple choice, whatever. Okay, so if your test allows you to do the forward and back thing, um, that might be a good idea if you're like more nervous about the essay questions or less nervous, or if you want to look at the essay prompts and do a little outline and then go back, whatever. Um, do it. Just do it. Then multiple choice questions. Focus on the question itself. Do you remember in elementary school when we had to circle and like underline the parts of speech in sentences? Um, do that with multiple choice questions, but instead you are circling or underlining or doing something to keep track of the tricky words. And those tricky words are and, not, but, like less than, more than, like those types of words, right? The tricky words that you need to keep track of because if it's going to be like, you know what I mean. You know what I mean. Focus on the question. A lot of us will look directly at the answers, and I do this. It's really tough, but you have to focus on the question. And then, what's really if you have a lot of test anxiety, you can even cover up all of the answers and only look at one answer at a time. Do very quickly, either in your mind if that works for you, or on the paper, if you can. Very quickly prove or disprove why that is the best answer or not. That way, it gives your brain closure so that you're not on question 26 thinking about question number one, being like, well, it could have been, maybe not. No, if you're confident in that answer, you can move on. Your brain can move on. You're good to go. Okay. So that's during the test. After the test, do something to celebrate. Do something to like get that energy out, move it away. You're done. You've done all that you can do. So if you've built up to this point using the skills that I've gone over, you've done all you can do. Okay? I mean, you've done your best in that moment. If these things aren't working, then come see someone in my office and we can talk about different things. But at this point, if you've like put in the work, you've put in the work and that's all you can do right now and the test is over, so what will be and we'll go from there. Okay? And there's always going to be options. So, do something to celebrate, give yourself some closure and move on. Because that's all we can do at that point. I mentioned you need to meet with us, right? So, like, these things are not going to work for every single person. These are just some starting spaces because they can also, as long as you try some things, just try some things because clearly something's not working. So, you got to try something new. And even if you try it and it doesn't work, then you know it doesn't work. Okay. So, there's a ton of options of how you can reach out for additional support. Professional support, like me, Professional. Student success and advising, you can schedule appointments online through the WCS icon on the top of your Woo portal. We've got appointments for all different kinds of things. We're kind of, if you don't know where else to go, come see us. That's kind of where we're at. But we can just have an entire appointment where we're looking at your success strategies. Okay. So going over the stuff that's in this PowerPoint, but if one of these things is like not working for you, we can talk about what are some other options that you've got. We've got so many resources for you. I also very, very, very much encourage going to instructor office hours because instructors need to know if there's a certain concept or a certain area of the course content that people are struggling with so that they can go over it or, come at it a different way or offer more resources. They're never going to know that that's a really tough concept unless someone tells them, right? Because like they've got a degree in this. They're really excited about this content and they love it, but they also don't know what you're struggling with unless you tell them. Okay, so that's what instructor office hours are for. Um, in the classes that I've taught, when I'm an instructor, if I'm hearing from students, and especially if I'm hearing from multiple students that something's off or really hard to understand, I'm going to adjust how I grade, I might even adjust the assignments, and I might even adjust some of the class content so that we can either spend more time on that tough concepts and we can spend some more time making sure that we're good with it. Um, or, I'll spend some extra time with the student in office hours, making sure that they understand. But I wouldn't know that until someone tells me, go to office hours. Just do it. There's also some peer support, right? So tutoring, the tutoring through my office, same app, the WCS icon. You can also get tutoring through that app. Um, but you don't have to need help with a certain area like math, like that. We don't do math. There's like the math center for math tutoring, but let's see, let's do something else. Political science, like you could be doing fine with understanding the concepts, but you're just having struggles with note taking or studying for the test or even test anxiety, right? Or study skills. Those are tutoring appointment reasons. Like it's on there. You just say skills based appointments, study skills, please. Let's talk with a tutor about study skills. That's a thing. That's tutoring. So, and that's free and available to you. The woo.edu/free tutoring website is really helpful. It goes over all of the tutoring services for all the different subjects and where you can get support for that. So definitely check out that website. Take a second, think about what are you going to use. Please try something. One thing, choose one thing at least from this list and make a commitment to yourself to just try it out. See if it works. And if it doesn't, maybe try a different one or maybe make an appointment with us. Okay? That's all I'm asking. Just one. Just try one. If you've got any other questions, you can absolutely email me. My email is boyleg, BOYLEG at wou.edu. Or you can schedule an appointment with me through the WCS icon on your Woo portal. And hopefully that QR code works if you want to hold up your phone camera to it. Um, we're here for you. My whole office, all of us in student success and advising are here for you and are ready to talk about success strategies. You've got this. It's going to be great. Let's keep it moving.